So welcome everybody. And just a reminder that our Nebraska NeMTSS Media Library does have all of our previous Coffee Connect recordings, as well as lots of other webinars with lots of great resources to be able to access. So be sure to check that out if you have not already. Thanks for joining us this morning. So we are going to be talking a little bit about our prosocial behavior. So our SEBL skill of prosocial behavior, sharing some resources, and just kind of defining that a little bit. I'm Jill Gunther. I'm one of the SEBL specialists with Nebraska NeMTSS, and I serve Region 3. So that's ESUs 1, 7, and 8. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself.
I am Sarah Gentry. I am SEBL Specialist for Region 5. That's ESUs 13, 15, and 16. And I'm going to pass it on to Chandra.
Hello, I'm Chandra Essex, and I work with Region 4, which is ESUs 9, 10, 11, and 17. And we also have Mackenzie with us. I don't know if she'd like to introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Mackenzie. I serve Region 1 as the SEBL Specialist. Region 1 is ESU 4, 5, 6, and also includes LPS.
Perfect. And then we also have Emily, who serves Region 2, and that's ESUs 2, 3, and then OPS. All right, so just to kind of get us started, we always like to start with our welcoming inclusion activity, one of the 3 inclusive practices. So remember that those welcoming inclusion activities, those engaging practices, and that optimistic closure can really help to build that sense of community, whether it be within the classroom or with colleagues. So like during staff meetings or things like that, really helps to build that welcoming, safe, supportive environment. And so we have just kind of a fun one for you guys this morning. Which Adam Sandler are you? So take a look at those pictures, the numbers 1 through 6 there, and see which one you feel like you're kind of resonating with this morning, which one's kind of speaking to you. This actually comes from the first 5. If that is not a resource that you have checked out or signed up for, we would encourage you to check it out. They have tons of great activities that can be used for those welcoming inclusion, those optimistic closures, lots of great like mindful activities, breathing exercises, just kind of like greetings at the door. They have an elementary as well as a secondary one. So if you sign up, you'll get just a daily email with access to those resources that change each and every day. So a great resource to check out if you have not. All right, so let's take a look to see what everybody is thinking today. We kind of have a wide range. Oh, Emily's feeling like a 3 and a 5. Coffee and hungry. That's also the one that I was connecting with. I said I did not grab anything for breakfast, although I do have my coffee, but I was feeling a little hungry earlier. Yes, I love it. Quite a few 5. We have lots of hungry people this morning. Love it, love it. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. I also love what day is it? Yes. My kids are on spring break this week as well. So I feel like that always just kind of like messes everything up, just kind of messes the morning routine up. All right. Well, thanks for participating in that. Again, just lots of fun ones. They, in that first 5, they have lots of creative ones. So great ones to check out. Just a reminder here as well. So we have our Padlet of all kinds of different information, resources, videos from all of our previous Coffee Connects. We always try to have our most recent Coffee Connect in there as well. So we have some prosocial behavior resources in there, as well as all of the previous ones. So it's a great just kind of library if you're looking for some different resources around each of our different skill areas. We also have sections in there where if you are looking for particular resources or are interested in hearing more about a certain topic, you can certainly check that out, add that information in there so that we can always come back to that for our next Coffee Connect, or if any questions pop up or arise for you guys as well. So we do have our Padlet linked on there, and then the password is all caps, it's NeMTSS. And then just to kind of start us off with a quote. So this comes from Brene Brown. Love her work. And it's just kind of fitting as we're talking about some of those skills that fall within prosocial behavior. So empathy has no script. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of you're not alone. Okay, so just a nice one to really just kind of center us around our topic this morning as well. Our definition, so our Nebraska MTSS definition of SEBL, or social emotional behavioral learning, just a reminder, it is that systematic process. So when we're working to really foster those social, those emotional skills for students as well as adults. So all of the information, the resources that we're sharing are obviously great for students, but please don't forget that they're also great to share with our colleagues, to using within our meetings, our staff meetings, PLCs, whatever that might be, because it's important to really foster those skills, not only for our students, but also for our adults as well, to really work to create that safe, that supportive, that welcoming environment so that we can have those positive behavioral as well as mental health outcomes for all. This is our skills web. So we just released this not too long ago, just really kind of updated some of the language, kind of shifted some of the information, some of the skills that fall within those 5 different skill areas, which are self-awareness, self-management, problem solving, relationships, and then prosocial behavior. And prosocial behavior is really the one that we're going to be honing in on today. We have done Coffee Connects on several of the other ones. So if you're interested in some of that information, be sure to check out our media library that we shared a couple slides ago. This is also a nice just resource as we're thinking about especially our secondary students and that prep for just kind of whatever comes next for post-secondary. So whether that be college, career, or community ready, but it's broken down by each of our 5 skill areas. And we just kind of pulled together, so lots of different resources, lots of different research that really kind of outlines some of the different skills that employers are looking for in their employees. And so again, a nice breakdown for our secondary students, but how great to be able to kind of utilize this even for like our middle school students, our elementary students as well. It's just kind of a nice breakdown of some of those skills that fall within those overarching skill areas, but really just kind of what employers are looking for as broken down in each of those different areas for those employability skills. As we're thinking about, especially today, as we talk about prosocial behavior, but really thinking about all of those SEBL skills within MTSS. And so we have our Nebraska MTSS essential elements. So really thinking about how we're really working to embed and integrate SEBL within our system. So we have the layered continuum of support, database decision-making, infrastructure and shared leadership, and then communication and collaboration. So just looking at our definition, so prosocial behavior. So really that ability to understand the perspectives as well as the experiences of others that may be different than our own. So really digging into that perspective taking. Displaying compassion for others' challenges, respecting and contributing to that inclusive environment, and then showing empathy towards others. When we think about prosocial behavior, kind of the question that we have to go along with that is really, how can I support others? So what can I do to help support others? And we're going to be just taking a look at each of those 4 skill areas and then sharing some resources that go along with each of those as well. So you saw our STAR skills web just a couple slides back where we have our 5 different skill areas. This is just kind of like a honed in on a problem or pro-social behavior skills, really taking a look at each of those and then just kind of like what are some of the skills that fall within each of those 4 areas. So our 4 areas are perspective taking, we have empathy, we have compassion, and then we have inclusion. And then we kind of break them down even further. And so when we're thinking about perspective taking, we have that respecting differences, demonstrating that curiosity, recognizing strengths in others, and then really utilizing those reflective listening skills. For empathy, the ones that we have identified within empathy is really thinking about how we can be present and engaged, how we can identify social cues and what those mean, understanding and expressing gratitude, and then validating the feelings of others. If we take a look at the other side there, compassion, so really kind of breaking that down into being able to acknowledge personal lived experiences, being able to honor the challenges of others, contributing to a caring community, and then treating others fairly. And then lastly, that inclusion. So within there, honoring others' experiences, understanding those diverse social norms, supporting inclusive practices, and then also respecting various learning styles. So just to kind of get us thinking about what does this look like? What does this sound like? We have an adult example for pro-social behavior, and then also a student example. So for the adult one, I can model appreciation and acceptance of others' beliefs and differences. So something to just kind of get us thinking like, what does this mean? Like, what can this look like? Whether that be self-talk or really being able to model that within the classroom setting. And then on the flip side there for our student example, during times of disagreement, I can reflect and admit when I have treated others unfairly. And then here we wanted to break it down even just a little bit further. So from that adult and student example, we just have a couple like, what could this look like, sound like within the classroom as well? So maybe it's during a social studies lesson and we're talking about discussing how people with different beliefs may have values that are different or relate to ours. And then also how might they impact the interactions that we have together? Okay, so just being able to kind of pull some of those pieces into the social studies lesson, what a great way to really integrate those pro-social behavior skills and be able to really think about what that means. Another example, so maybe it's you're working through a story problem. So someone might see it differently than you did. Think about how as well as why that is. When we talk about different strategies, different perspectives, we're really working on those pro-social behavior skills. So again, just another way to kind of bring that in. Maybe it's during math class, maybe it's during science class, kind of working through that process there. But just to kind of give you guys a couple examples of what that can look like, what that can sound like. This comes from Washoe. I really need to figure out how to say that school district because they have some really great resources on their site. We have it linked in here. But they do a nice job of really kind of breaking down some of those skills. And they actually had all of their students kind of complete some self-assessments. And identify some of those skills that they feel like are harder, are kind of like average, and then feel like they're a little bit easier. And so they have some nice breakdowns of what those self-assessments showed as far as some of those skills. So again, not necessarily great information for us as far as like the harder to average to easier, but does give us a little bit of a nice visual of those, but also they break them down even further to really get us thinking about some of those different skills as well that fall within that pro-social behavior. So again, just a nice resource to be able to access to kind of get some ideas of what can this look like or what are some of those that fall within. This is another great one. So it comes from the Achievery. So they have tons of great resources, lots of different videos, lesson plans, and it's all really broken down by those 5 different skill areas. So you can kind of like filter, do a search for some of those lessons, videos, and different resources around that area. So we wanted to also share that resource with you. As something that you can certainly make a free account and take a look at some of those that they offer on there as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to just kind of share a little bit on some of those different skill areas that fall within prosocial behavior.
Okay, thank you, Jill. I'm going to kick us off with perspective taking. Just kind of a reminder, the 4 sub-skills that came along with perspective taking that we talked about in our web are respecting differences, demonstrating curiosity, recognizing the strengths in others, and using reflective listening. So we like to kind of utilize quotes when we can, and we found this in an article written by Everyday Speech. The article is called How to Teach Perspective Taking Skills in Elementary School. So this was kind of defining perspective taking, and we thought it was really helpful to kind of start us off in this way. The quote reads, "Perspective taking is the cognitive ability to understand and consider different viewpoints. It involves recognizing that others may have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that differ from our own. Perspective taking allows children to develop a broader understanding of the world and navigate social situations effectively." I'm not really sure, but I think that definition really kind of hones in on why it's so important for us to really teach this skill. It's not always a skill that comes naturally, so it's great that we're talking about it and bringing it into our classrooms as a skill that's important for students. So thinking about that, bringing these perspective taking skills into the classroom, these are just some ideas on ways that you can incorporate this into your everyday conversation. So thinking about, kind of having students read and explore other perspectives during classroom discussions and facilitating those conversations where students are presenting the other side of an issue. And then when they're doing that and they're having that back and forth dialogue, kind of modeling and teaching them how to restate what somebody else's point is before they respond to them. So really kind of that active listening kind of falls into this as a skill that's super important, but really restating the issue so that you can make sure that they're really hearing and talking and having that good, healthy back and forth dialogue. And then thinking about maybe incorporating some prediction exercises. So asking students to practice taking another classmate's perspective into mind, and then maybe checking with the other students, say, like, how well did they do? Because when you're doing this, it's teaching students that it's okay to make a mistake, and then how to receive feedback that could be, if in an unhealthy dialogue that might be more elusive, or they might interpret it in a way that's passive aggressive. So really teaching them how to receive feedback when they maybe aren't correct in what they were thinking. So maybe they make an assumption on somebody's perspective and it's incorrect. So really teaching them how do you correct. So it's the back and forth with students. How do you correct somebody if they interpret your perspective incorrectly, and then how do you move forward from those discussions? Such an important skill for our kids. Another resource, we love to incorporate these in our Nebraska Career Development lesson plans. This website just has so many different lessons that are kind of built to teach those career readiness skills that we had talked about earlier. This one's on stereotypes for grade 8 is what it's recommended for. So, teaching about different stereotypes, talking about how they affect people, really big skill in thinking about perspective taking, helping students kind of recognize differences, how a different person might interpret a situation. So just a great lesson. And again, this is one of those career readiness skills that is super important. We want to make sure that post-secondary, when our kids leave our world, we want to make sure they have the skills that they need to be successful. So just a great lesson plan idea. And then I'm going to bring us into our skill of inclusion. The sub-skills that came along with inclusion, honoring each other's experiences, understanding diverse social norms, supporting inclusive practices, and then respecting various learning styles. Those are the 4 additional skills that we brought into that web. We like to just kind of give a shout out to organizations that do this well when we're thinking about inclusion. Special Olympics, we know they do such great things for kids, great inclusive practices happening within the organization of Special Olympics. And then our Circle of Friends virtual learning community. This one I don't think is as well known as Special Olympics. It certainly wasn't for me, but this is kind of a peer coaching model community where students who kind of have that typical neurodevelopment, students that might not have as many struggles with social scenarios, they go and they get to learn skills on how to engage, how to become friends with students who maybe think and do things a little bit differently than they do. So this kind of supports them, gives them the tools that they need, and teaches them to be peer mentors, so that they can provide education to their peers, create awareness around diversity and different students' needs. So just a great opportunity for students to kind of become leaders, and develop those inclusive habits. Another resource that we found as we were kind of researching this that we thought was kind of fun, this Movies That Move. We've got it linked into chat. It's got different films that promote inclusion, kind of encourages critical thinking. And then it's got a teacher's guide. So you can kind of go through, you find a film that maybe this is what I want to teach about. This might resonate really well with my students. And it's you can bring that into the classroom. It's already got the talking points kind of spelled out for you. Just a cool resource. I know kids love it when we bring movies into the classroom because they kind of feel like they're not learning. So, you can kind of trick them into, hey, you're learning something important. It's going to be a little bit more fun. And it gives you a break from talking as a teacher. It gives you kind of an opportunity to let somebody else demonstrate something. And then we think back into our career readiness lesson plans, teamwork on the job. So this is a 5th grade lesson, teaching kids the skills of teamwork, but really thinking about it and tying it into what it's going to look like for them in the workplace later on, and bringing in working with people of all different backgrounds, different learning skills, different social strengths, kind of giving them that opportunity to work with different people. So love this lesson plan. Another great one that's just another free resource that you can just jump in, download it, and take into your classroom. Our next skill that I'm going to talk about is compassion. We've got a link on this slide to Compassion for Kids. This has just so many different ideas and things that you can bring into the classroom. We wanted to make sure we just kind of threw that link in there so that you guys would have that resource. But when we think about teaching compassion, our 4 sub skills with that is acknowledging personal lived experiences, honoring the challenges of others, contributing to a caring community, and treating others fairly. And so we know that we teach compassion every day. We show up to work, we're there in the classroom, we're modeling those behaviors. And a lot of times we think of these things as an extra lesson that we have to teach, but I really want to make sure that we really hone in on the fact that teaching compassion is something that we do. We're doing it every day. We walk the walk all the time. These are just some ideas of improving our language, so that maybe we're kind of upping the ante a little bit and making our impact just a little bit stronger when we're thinking about making sure that we're modeling compassion. So just using those empathetic, compassionate talking points when we see something happening in our classroom that we might just want to demonstrate and show our students, this is how we show compassion. I'm not going to read each of them. I think we say these things probably every day, but it's just kind of a nice reminder when you are saying them, you are actually promoting a compassionate conversation in your classroom. I do love the 4th bullet point. I think this goes a lot into the work that we're going to be doing with restorative practices and thinking and acknowledging, hey, maybe I said something hurtful to someone. So how can I prompt my student into engaging in a conversation where they're restoring that relationship? So how can we show so-and-so that you didn't actually mean the words that came out of your mouth, that you didn't mean what you said, and just working with them on how to have those hard conversations and be compassionate when maybe they create harm, intentionally or unintentionally. And then how can we act more kindly is another great prompt, like, hey, what do we got to do to show more kindness? So just those things that we're already doing that are great. Our next piece, when we're thinking about teaching compassion, service learning, when we were going through this, we were like, where could service learning fit? Because service learning teaches everything. We brought it into compassion because we felt like it really, really kind of went in on that bullet point of contributing to a caring community. Service learning is a way to kind of broaden our impact in our compassionate practices. I talked about last time, service learning was one of my favorite things. When I think back and reflect into my educational experience, I can remember those opportunities where we were doing community service projects. I remember how that felt. I remember feeling like I had done something good. So it's really a great way to kind of show compassion for your community, and the kids working together, again, that teamwork, that overall contribution to just being involved is such a great way to teach compassion, to also teach inclusion. So everybody can do service learning. We can bring every student into that opportunity. The link on the slide has lots of different service learning service learning projects that you can do. Some of them are really involved. Some of them are very small, easy things to do. But just a great resource if you're kind of trying to, I know a lot of times in the springtime, that's when schools are like, oh, we're going to do our community service work. So if you're looking for ideas or you haven't gotten those figured out and you're wanting something, great resource to utilize. Our next piece, this is again kind of thinking about modeling. How do we teach compassion? What are things that we do every day? What I love about this is it kind of puts it into action steps that you can do. The visual, it's really great to kind of just start practicing your own compassionate resilience and thinking about, how do I do this? I think after you kind of practice it and you start to recognize those steps, it's really great to even model it, just kind of verbalizing as you're going through the steps, so you notice something's happening. And I think even verbalizing, saying, I see this is happening in my classroom. This is how it's making me feel right now. So demonstrating that you're checking in with yourself, and letting your students see that that's a regular part of the process. So modeling that for your students, just letting them know one of the most important steps in being compassionate is knowing where I'm at. I've got to take my own personal temperature to see if I'm ready for the next step. And kind of checking in with yourself. So then you go into seeking understanding. You can kind of talk through what that looks like. You can demonstrate and model that, cultivating your empathy, then discerning what is the best action. So co-planning with somebody that's experiencing a hard time. Like, what are we going to do to make this best? Having those questions. Maybe that question is, how do we, you see a student that hurt another student's feelings. Okay, what do we have to do? What do we need to do to show the student that you didn't mean what you said? So that's another great area where you're co-planning. What is the action step? And then taking the action and walking alongside of your students when you're doing that, or demonstrating to them and walking them through it with some verbal prompts is just a great strategy. And then our career development lesson plan for this section, we included reflective listening. It's pretty tough to be compassionate if you can't hear other people. Reflective listening is a great skill, improves communication. This is just one of those skills that you want to make sure that your students have, especially when they leave and they're going into the workplace or they're going into higher education. We need them to be able to communicate appropriately. And it's just a great opportunity for middle schoolers to engage in some learning on reflective listening. Now I'm going to hand it over to Chandra, and she's going to talk to us about empathy.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. So you'll see on the screen a great graphic that talks about empathy and what people think empathy is and what empathy actually is. So what folks may think empathy is feeling sorry for someone, while empathy actually is sensing someone's emotions, imagining yourself in their situation, showing that genuine concern, offering support, respecting their feelings without changing them. I think that's important to understand when we think about empathy. We're not trying to change what they're doing or how they're feeling. We're just listening, and we're just trying to be supportive of them. So when we think about the empathy 4 sub-skills, those would be present and engaged, identify social cues, understand and express gratitude, and validate the feelings of others. So that goes along with this graphic of, what's underneath the surface is helping validate the empathy component when we think about this skill. So this slide talks about gratitude, and gratitude activities in alignment with empathy so perfectly. There are 4 different resources up on the screen. The first one is 30 different gratitude activities for kids and teens that you can do in the classroom, in organizations, so in a variety of different ways. The second one is from Positive Psychology. It is the 13 most popular gratitude exercises and activities. Again, you can do with your students. You can adapt some to do with your peers. So really thinking about how we show gratitude to others really helps us strengthen that empathy muscle. The next one is the Greater Good magazine, has the gratitude activities for the classrooms. Sarah talked a lot about service learning, and gratitude can fall alongside service learning, is making sure that we're showing how we are gracious towards others and ourselves. It's really important to think about how we show ourselves gratitude in addition to others. It's a great skill to build in our students, and it's something that just can come as a natural piece of the day. And then the last one is from Scholastic. It's uplifting gratitude activities. So again, 4 great resources of different gratitude practices, gratitude activities, and exercises that you can do in the classroom with your students and or with your peers, and thinking about how that aligns with your empathy. The next slide talks about identifying social cues, which that is one of our sub skills when we think about empathy. So the resource that there's 3 different resources that are up on the screen. The first one is evidence-based social skills activities and games for kids, thinking about in early childhood or elementary, what are those skills to help our students understand social cues? And this is an important piece of empathy, because if we can't really pick up on what those social cues of others are, then it's hard to be empathetic and to catch that. So teaching that skill sometimes to littles is and to older students is a great thing to consistently strengthen that muscle. The second one is from the Mental Health Center for Kids, and it's for teens. It talks about those social skill activities. So again, thinking about too, what are the social cues, helping our teens realize that, take down the electronics, see what's around us, and really pick up on what those social cues are. And then the last one is Jill Kuzma, and I'm going to slaughter that name, Social Thinking's resource. And so it's ideas for educators in supporting the social emotional language skills. Social emotional behavioral components are interwoven in all of the academic activities that are happening. So really being purposeful and kind of connecting that language skills can help again with those social cues. As we have done the whole rest of the Coffee Connect, we have tied and pulled out one of Nebraska Career Development's lesson plans. This is one for grade 9 students, and it is one called Love It or Hate It. So in this, again, we think about what are those social cues? How do we build empathy skills? This lesson will help students interview adults to find out what are the great things about that world of work? What are the aspects, the adult stories that are really doing well? And what are the challenges of being in the working world? And it helps give students the insights that they need to maybe see where empathy plays a role in that in a daily basis in your work, not just in the classroom. So it gives them that opportunity to do some live laboratory components of really interviewing and working with adults and seeing how the work experience of you love your job sometimes and you hate your job sometimes, and how we use empathy interwoven in that is really important. This next slide, I love this graphic. It talks about compassion versus empathy and that battle of understanding. I think it's easy sometimes to not see the differences of compassion versus empathy, and maybe sometimes to get those confused. And so according to Brené Brown, empathy really involves that putting yourself in someone else's shoes and experiencing their emotions, while compassion involves that feeling of deep concern for someone's well-being and taking action to help them. So if we think about compassion is action and empathy is the cognitive, the emotional components of it. So compassionate action, you're really doing something to help someone in need. You're moved to help them. Compassionate leadership, we see this maybe in our buildings, hopefully in our classrooms. You'll see it from educators to students, of those leaders that are just going to kind of come to the surface to help others because they are emphasizing that empathy and that kindness and the understanding. You'll see some students are really good about that, and some students maybe need a build in those social cues to really work that muscle of compassion for others. But when we think about compassion, that compassion is action, that's where compassion fatigue can come into play really quickly, especially when we're in the classroom, when we're working with a variety of students, when we're working with our peers. Compassion fatigue can really play a role in how we are with our students and how we arrive on a daily basis. So again, thinking about as we have that empathy mindset, compassion is a piece of it, empathy is a piece of it, but how do we bring those two together and still take care of ourselves when we think about that compassion fatigue? Because this is something that is very real in education and can really play into the idea of burnout. So empathy is that cognitive component. Cognitive empathy, we think about, that's the perspective taking, the ability to understand the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Sometimes I think about my 6-year-old daughter. Empathy might look different for her than it does for a junior in high school. And so really understanding that cognitive development component really, so empathy can really be built. Emotional empathy, so effective empathy, the feelings of emotions in others. But again, remembering it's not putting your feelings onto them, it's involving yourself and understanding their feelings. And then that physical empathy, knowing that ability to feel those physical sensations of others. So being able to pick up on, again, those social cues, reading the room. Is somebody sad? Can you tell by their body language? Are they tense? Are they relaxed? That all falls into that physical empathy components. But empathy is such a complex process because it involves those various regions of the brain, the insula and the anterior cortex. So understanding that, again, empathy is that those cognitive components, and that compassion is the action, that leadership component. So really those human interactions, those communications are what builds this skill of prosocial, and everything we've talked about today really kind of, as we build those muscles, that's where we become stronger in them. As Sarah mentioned, we are working on implementing restorative practices across the state, so we're super excited about that. So we wanted to give you some ideas about circle prompts, and we know schools are doing opening circles and closing circles in classrooms. They're doing community conversations in a variety of different ways. Maybe it's morning meetings, and so we wanted to give you just some examples of what those circle prompts might be, breaking it down to compassion and then breaking it down to empathy. So some of those might be, you can see on this slide, what actions can someone show to feel better when you are, insert an emotion, sad, mad, etc. Another one might be, consider a situation that you have witnessed, unfairness. How can you respond with compassion to support those who are affected? The last one might be, share a story or an example of compassion, of a compassionate act you witnessed recently. What qualities or actions made it meaningful? So those are just some nice little prompts that you can think about. The next slide talks about circle prompts for empathy. So again, thinking about compassion as action and empathy is more that cognitive. understanding of feelings. And so would you rather give a hug or get a hug? Please explain why. And this is a great one because we know students aren't always and adults are not always touchy-feely. So asking that question and getting insight into why they feel that way, again, will help build that empathy muscle. A next question might be, share a time when someone showed you genuine empathy. How did it make you feel, and how did it impact your relationship with that person? And then the last example we gave is share a time when you have felt understood by another person. As we always talk about, when you think about circle prompts or questions for your classroom, you want to make sure that it's developmentally appropriate for the level of students you're working with or the adults that you're working with, so that they really feel comfortable in sharing that information with their peers and others in the circle. We wanted to show just a few different resources around books. We've been able to do this the last couple of Coffee Connects as we have delved through our SEB skills. And so these are some resources of books from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation. So it's the Book Nook is one of them that's up there. But you can search this for a variety of different books, which again, I think Sarah talked about, maybe movies is a different way to teach reading, and books is a great way to teach and to utilize student skills and build those. We found some books to support for the work for elementary. This is from a resource called Reading Rocks. You can again sort the books as to what those skills might be that you're looking for, really to enhance that social emotional different skill. So around compassion and empathy. And then the last one is books to support the work that we're doing in secondary. So the adolescent literacy resource here, you can again search. And this might look different in secondary. Maybe it's a book study in a class versus maybe studying it and reading it that you might do at a elementary level or an early childhood level. So thinking about what the differences of the secondary component might look like. And you could also do this with a study. Well, thank you all for joining us today and for sharing. As always, you'll see on the screen our map, and SEBL specialists are so excited to help you and give you any additional support. Just reach out to us, and we thank you again for joining us this morning for our Coffee Connect.